Okay, so ever get that feeling? Like your brain just won't quit. And I don't mean busy. I mean like it's exhausting itself, just spinning.
Oh, totally. That feeling of being mentally wiped out, but it's not your to-do list. It's like your own thoughts wearing you down.
Exactly. And there's actually this concept in Chinese psychology. It's called nei hao. And it sort of means spiritual internal friction, which, okay, doesn't quite translate perfectly.
No, but it really gets at that feeling, that you're kind of your own worst enemy sometimes, mentally speaking.
It's so true. And we're actually doing a whole deep dive on this today, all about this inner friction thing. There's this Chinese psychology video we found, and it's got these 5 ways to combat it.
I'm so here for that. Because who couldn't use a little less mental friction, right?
Seriously. So they start by talking about what causes this EEA in the first place. And they describe it as like this mental exhaustion, but it's triggered by our own thoughts, those thinking traps we fall into.
Right, like the overthinking, the replaying situations in your head on a loop, the doubt spirals, we've all been there.
100%. It's like we're our own worst critics sometimes. So what are the main culprits here? What's at the root of all this mental drama?
Well, first up, they talk about the pressure of unrealistic expectations. And it's not even just about, like, wanting to do well for ourselves. It often comes from these external pressures, family, society, that whole thing.
Oh, for sure. Like the pressure to be successful, to live up to certain standards.
Yeah. And there's this phrase they use, wang sheng long, wang zhengfeng, which basically translates to hoping your son becomes a dragon, your daughter a phoenix.
Wow. Talk about pressure. Like, no big deal. Just become a mythical creature.
Right. And then on top of that, you've got the whole comparison game, which, let's be honest, social media has just amplified times 1,000.
Oh, absolutely. It's relentless. It's like you're constantly bombarded with everyone else's highlight reel.
Totally. It's hard not to feel inadequate when you're scrolling and you see, like, 20-somethings making millions, and you're like, okay, what am I doing wrong?
Right. It's like, wait, is everyone else thriving but me?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the pressure of expectations, the constant comparisons.
Yeah.
What's the third thing they say contributes to this inner friction?
So this one's interesting. It's about our own cognitions, basically how we're interpreting events and the meaning we're assigning to them. And they actually bring up the ABC theory from CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, to explain this.
Okay, color me intrigued. I've heard of CBT, but how does this ABC theory work? And what does it have to do with all this inner turmoil we're talking about?
Okay, so picture this. You send someone a message, right? And they don't reply. That's A, the activating event. Now, B is your belief about that event. So maybe you think, they're ignoring me, or, oh no, they must be mad at me.
Okay, so it's not even the event itself, but it's our thoughts about it that are really doing a number on us.
Exactly. And C is the consequence, meaning the emotional reaction you have because of that belief. And that could be anything from, like, anxiety, sadness, to anger, frustration, you name it.
So it's not necessarily what's happening to us, but it's how we're thinking about it that really throws us for a loop.
It's huge, and that's where this awareness piece comes in, right? The video really emphasizes that becoming aware of these Bs, those automatic thoughts, that's like step 1.
Yeah.
Because just by noticing them, we can start to question them, maybe even reframe them.
It's like hitting the pause button on that mental autopilot.
Right.
Instead of just getting swept away by all those thoughts and emotions, you take a second to be like, hold on, what's going on here? Why am I feeling this way? What's the story I'm telling myself right now?
Yes. And often that simple act of paying attention can be surprisingly powerful.
Wow. So much to think about. But awareness is like step 1, right? What happens after you hit that pause button?
Yeah.
Because then you're just sitting there with all those thoughts and feelings, and now what?
Totally. It's not enough to just notice those thoughts. We've got to do something about them. And that's where the other methods come in. Method number 2 is all about action. It's called the binary thinking method. And it's kind of amazing how simple but effective it can be.
Okay, I'm all about simple and effective, especially when it comes to, like, taming my inner critic. What is this binary thinking thing?
So you know how we get stuck in overthinking? Like, analyzing every little option and what-if scenario. Binary thinking just cuts through all of that.
I feel that. Analysis paralysis is real.
Right. It basically simplifies your decision down to a simple do or don't do. No maybes, no endless deliberation, just a clear choice, one way or the other.
I can see how that would be so helpful. Give me an example, though. How does this work in real life?
Okay, so say you're stressing about a presentation you have to give at work. Your mind's probably racing. What if I mess up? What if people hate it? All those anxieties. Binary thinking helps you cut through all that noise. Ask yourself, am I going to practice this presentation or not? Just that.
So it's less about the presentation itself and more about just taking a concrete step. Either you do it or you don't.
Exactly. It's action over agonizing. And often just making that choice is enough to break free from that overthinking cycle.
Action over angst. I like
Yeah.
that. Okay, what else you got? What's method number 3?
Okay, this one is one of my faves. It's the idea of setting an expiration date for your mental anguish.
An expiration date for like negative emotions. Okay, I am definitely intrigued. Tell me more about this.
Yeah, it sounds kind of weird at first, but it's such a powerful reframe, right? Instead of letting negative emotions like hang over you indefinitely, you decide how long you're going to let yourself wallow.
Oh, I see. So you set a limit, basically.
Exactly, like setting a timer, and when it goes off, you commit to shifting your focus. It doesn't mean you're denying the emotion, but you're not letting it control you either.
It's like, okay, I'm giving myself this time to feel this, but then we're moving on.
Yes. It's about setting healthy boundaries with yourself and your emotions. There's even this analogy in the video. It's like a court sentence, right? You acknowledge the crime, maybe you made a mistake or you're dealing with a tough situation, but you don't have to sentence yourself to a lifetime of guilt or worry.
Wow. That's really powerful, actually. Okay, so we've talked about awareness, taking action, and setting boundaries with our emotions. What about the last 2 methods? What are those all about?
So method 4 is about boundaries too, but this time it's about setting boundaries with other people, and specifically the people who might be like fueling that inner critic.
Oh, that's such a good point. We don't always realize how much other people's opinions or behaviors can really affect how we see ourselves.
Right? It's like their voices get all tangled up with our own inner voice. And this video doesn't sugarcoat it. They're very clear that not everyone has to like us. And honestly, that's okay.
It's easier said than done, though, right?
Yeah.
To just not care what other people think. But I get it. It's about focusing on your own path.
Exactly. It's about you. And that actually leads perfectly into method number 5, which is all about finding your voice and using it.
Okay, finding your voice, using your voice. That's an interesting one. I mean, we're talking about quieting that inner monologue, those internal struggles. Right?
Yeah.
So how does speaking up help with that?
So it's kind of about taking those internal struggles and like bringing them out into the open, shifting them to a shared space. You know, the video actually talks about this thing called subconscious consciousness, basically. It's about bringing those hidden anxieties, those worries to light.
Oh, I see. So it's almost like by saying those fears out loud, by actually vocalizing them, it helps us to sort of untangle them.
Yeah, exactly. Think about it like this. When we keep everything bottled up inside, those negative thoughts, they tend to like swirl around and just get bigger, right?
Yeah.
But when we actually share them, even if it feels a little scary at first, it can be so therapeutic.
I can see that. It's like that fear of judgment maybe lessens when you realize you're not the only one feeling that way.
Exactly. Sharing our struggles, it can actually help us connect with other people, build support systems. And that actually plays into another really important point in the video, self-compassion.
Oh, yes. Self-compassion. I feel like that's such a crucial piece of this whole puzzle, especially when we're battling that inner critic.
Yeah.
How does self-compassion tie into all of this?
Well, it's about recognizing that we don't have to be perfect. You know, it's okay to make mistakes. We're all works in progress, right? But we're often so much harder on ourselves than we would ever be on anyone else.
Oh, 100%. It's so easy to fall into that trap of being super self-critical, especially when you're already feeling drained.
For sure. But the video emphasizes how important self-compassion is, especially for combating this inner friction. Like, imagine how you'd talk to a close friend who is struggling with the same things. We need to treat ourselves with that same kindness and understanding.
Yeah, it's like replacing that harsh inner critic with a voice that's actually supportive and encouraging. But how do you actually do that? How do you practice self-compassion when those negative thought patterns just feel so automatic?
Well, it starts with just noticing those critical thoughts, those judgments. Once you're aware of them, you can start to challenge them. Ask yourself, like, would I say this to a friend? And if the answer is no, then why are you saying it to yourself, right?
I love that, challenging those ingrained beliefs and like consciously choosing to replace them with one that are actually kinder and more supportive. And I think it's so cool how this video ties it all together. We've got awareness, action, setting boundaries, both with ourselves and others, connecting with other people, and all of that underpinned by this foundation of self-compassion.
It's a really holistic approach, isn't it?
It is. It's like a roadmap to navigating being human with
Yeah.
all its ups and downs. And I especially appreciate how practical it is.
Right. It's not about reaching some perfect state of like zero inner friction. It's about having tools to work with, right?
Exactly. It's about finding a little more peace of mind, a little more breathing room in our own heads. Well, this has been an amazing deep dive. I feel like we've explored this concept of olio from all angles.
It's been great unpacking all of this with you.
It really has. And, even though these internal struggles are something we all deal with, sometimes it helps just to know that you're not alone in it.
Absolutely. And that there are things we can do about it.
Exactly. So as always, we want to hear from you what resonated most for you today, and what's one small step you can take this week to cultivate a little more peace in your own inner world.